Welcome to Deborah Marie Brain Plasticity Podcast.
Hey, how you doing today? This is Deborah Marie, back on podcast today. I'm under the weather, but you can't just quit. You can't just quit your job when you start a job. And I was in Canada 2 different times living there, and I got various items out here today because of one. What does Canada have in common with Kentucky? We got the Kentucky Derby here, but Canada has the Stampede. It's the largest horse show in the world. And when I say horse show, I'm talking about they have everything, every type of wild horses, and a cowboy's dream to go and compete. And there's so many competitions that it goes for several weeks or a week. And they start off early on, and I have never seen so many cowboy hats in my life of various types in cowboy boots, on various types of people, women, when I say people, men and women, and stuff. But I'm not going to throw the whole story into that Stampede and Kentucky Derby, because we may get into people may say, nothing can beat the Derby and nothing can beat the Stampede. I just lived there and experienced something new. And what did that do? This is about brain plasticity. I went to my doctor, Dr. Kalin. He did a physical of me. And just like Canada, now you probably don't know there, if you're going to live there, they actually do a physical, just like New Zealand. I didn't say that about the New Zealand story, but you actually have to go to a doctor and do a true physical. And you have to turn it over to them. And it has to be, x-rays, make sure you don't have TB, bronchitis, all sorts of different things that are serious that you're going to be in. I go to my doctor, and he says, yeah, you're okay to go. Document it. I had to go to their physical places that they had told me that I would go to, and for immigration there, because I was going to stay quite a while. And since I had a neural illness, what they're thinking is, she going to take up a bed and be there for any length that you have to remember they're socialists. Is she going to take up a bed and be there and take up the state economy problems and stuff? Y'all don't think about that, or people don't. So, but I'm not going to drag that in and drag on about it, but I'm going to just let you know, easy peasy to get here with all kinds of sicknesses. It is not everywhere else in the world. So I got other countries I've had to do that. And like I said, I had to do New Zealand. But anyway, getting back to it is that I love Calgary. It was a beautiful place. I lived off of the Bow River, and that is a wide river right in the middle of Calgary, and it goes through the countryside. And also I was able to enjoy the mountains and Lake Louise, even further up in Jasper. I've seen snow that's unbelievable. I went into a ice storm and didn't know what an ice storm was. But me, misadventurous, had to get out of the car, and hotels are closed around this whole strip of this cold area during that winter. And I wanted to see what an ice storm was and what it felt like. So I got out, car, walked over. It's like a tornado going, and all of this ice is everywhere. And people who are from the north or farther north probably understand all of this, is that I had no clue. So it was an adventure. I only stayed out there a few minutes, and I'm glad I did, because I found out when you're in one of those, it could freeze your lawns and damage them. And so that is probably the most, no, I won't say it was stupid. It was a great adventure to feel all of that freezing point and all of that flying around you. And it was so interesting for a Southerner, somebody who's always been in the warm weather and everything. So, but that did not lead to my brain injury, but all of these adventures that I have done in all of these types of places that I have gone, and as I tell you a little bit more about the area of Calgary, which was Sunnyside, and that, of course, people talk different. Of course, they thought, and believe it or not, some people actually thought down in the South, now we're talking about anything past Missouri and south, they thought we still had slaves and still had plantations. That one I couldn't comprehend. That one was really an experience to find out how uneducated even Canadians can be about the world and about the U.S. So I had to straighten them out and tell them, I says, do you realize we're in we're in 2014, or we're 2016 or 2018, when I was there, when it happened periodically. Also, they had a diversification of people there. There was some wonderful food, Pakistani food, Indian food, regular Canadian food, which is different from U.S. food. I don't want to explain all the plates, but they did have an IHOP, and they did have a Danny's, and so it was the same. So if you ever wanted to go to that time of place, I think they even had Waffle House, and stuff. So, that was, of course, they had Coca-Cola. Of course, they had Pepsi, and everything. But the beauty was that you were in a city that you could just walk across the Bow River on a bridge. You could even have a bicycle. You didn't have to have a car. It was conveniently designed, several spaces along, to where you could get to the other side of the communities. And so I always did. They had cafes, wonderful cafes, just like we have here in Kentucky. And desserts, of course, even though I'm not supposed to have lots, I tried them out here and there. There also was, Bow River would get pretty rough at times. And I find young men and women out on the Bow River at a certain section that was near one of the bridges that had a big, and I think I put it out on my website periodically, that had a lot of waves to it. They had surfboards and was surfing on the river water. It was that powerful for them to be able to do that. And I stood there fascinated and just loved it, filmed it, talked to some of them. They laughed, my non-knowledge of any of this. And then there was one guy who got out there, and I bet you he could go, if he hasn't done it yet, he could go to a surfboard competition, and he could probably be in the competition because he could stay up on that river water so long and contain it and be able to do that rough rapid. Maybe it didn't have a highest web, but it was a continuous ripple but rapid movement that I think he could go on a smoother and be in a competition. Now that's just my personal opinion. Everybody can have one, and these videos are based on Deborah's experiences. I'm not telling you to go out and do it. I'm not telling you they're the best. I'm just telling you my experience, okay? So you could go across. Now, another thing I got to tell you about along the Bow River in that area. They clean up the streets and they clean up the sidewalks so much is that people ride their bicycles to work. I have never seen people ride bicycles in the snow. And we're not talking slow. And I used to get my coat on, go down there and watch them. And they'd be coming home or going to work, doing whatever. And the way the bridges were built, of course, with covers and stuff like that, but the way they cleaned up the sidewalks, and then the way that even when it was a heavy snow the night before, I don't know how, it had a temperate of snow that was so soft, but they could get through that. And I had never once saw anybody fall, have an accident, run into each other. Now, I did plenty of times have them do their little bike, ding, ding, ding. Even if I wasn't in their way, they would consider it on the basis that they were on dangerous terrain and they wanted me to move if they decided to go down the sidewalk instead of the pathway to get on that clearer area and stuff. So that was interesting to be around. The flowers that they hung out everywhere in the park, they had hanging baskets that they put out in parks that were just absolutely gorgeous, and they had them on their lights of the park, so you could go out there and walk at night, and also there would be a hanging basket, and it was just absolutely lovely. And then they had some restaurants that you would go to within these parks that were luxury restaurants, not your total high end, but middle of the road, but very nice. In the summer, they had outdoors areas. In the winter, they had indoor area, except for during I think it was the January, February, that they were closed, was the worst time, because they couldn't get employees there, or else they would be open. Even though they had all the clearing, it's just that, employees go from a long way of town and stuff. And even though it was a state park, they still had a state park facility, nice restaurant there. I think it was a co-op development on this one particular restaurant that was so nice, and it wasn't independent. I don't know totally about that, but that's another thing when I think about Canada. When I lived in Calgary, I also experienced their train system, and everybody in America think train systems are just dull. Why do people talk about them? And all I can tell you is that they were the smoothest, fastest, efficient. Yeah, once or twice I might have had to wait, but I could get downtown from where I was, and be able to go to the library. And the library was like this boat, and it was made out of antique, and it was kind of like our boat that we have, Noah's Ark. It was similar. And it was not antique, but teak wood on the outside. And I never understood that because that's very expensive wood to take care of in that kind of weather. But inside, they had various levels, but they had this one section on the bottom floor. And every Sunday, it was dance time. And people would come all over the city. And I used to go there, and I'd have young men asking me to dance, and I enjoyed it, and we had fun. And it's not that they were young men, it's just that I'm older, and than some people that would not adventure and do that. I also would check out books for art. Now I'm going to get into my art a little bit. This right here is my first piece of copper, and this is Sunnyside, and there's the building of a hotel. There is another little house hotel. Over in here is some other stores. Going down here is some stores. If you look at this, it has cars, and there's a green light. There's cars going across the river. Here's the bow. There's some trees along it and stuff like that. Then they always had grassy areas. And then right in here, they had a memorial for the veterans, which takes you to another place. Just like in England, and I wish we did this because it's very respectful. And it was very rare did I not find anybody who did not have a poppy on their top, their t-shirt, somewhere on their wrists, and up in the city they always had poppies. And if people don't know what that is, that's World War I, and a lot of Canadians participated in that, and a lot of people died. And it's for the first war with the Germans and ending it. So they would put up on the light these big flags, and I think I've had that on Facebook periodically, pictures of the poppies with baskets and stuff like that. But what I liked about it, and I've seen it some in England, pictures, is that they wear that. I wish during 4th of July, other than the clothes, for a time period, we would be that dedicated to wear. I know we have flags out at houses periodically, but I'm talking about a dedicated type of pin that we wear that would show our flag. This is patriotism. And that is this for Canadians, for English, for Australians, and others that had to participate in the terrible wars. I'm not saying we need a king, because it has nothing to do with the king. Nothing. It has to do with patriotism. The next thing I noticed is also, due to my sickness, besides scanning me pretty well to come in, they immediately had me to go to a migraine class and sit for 3 hours and learn about migraines. And the doctor that taught about it went over all of them and had people to ask questions about their migraines so they could learn. And I thought that was very good. Unfortunately, this is the downside. I raised my hand and I says, what about a hemiplegic migraine? And she said, sign this piece of paper. I'll get back with you in 2 or 3 days. She got back with me in 2 or 3 days, and here I am. I'm quite sure I was somewhere around 58. And I was too old for the further exercise class to learn how to do exercises with socialism, state money. I wouldn't have had to pay for it, for my hemiplegic migraine. Do you know how discouraging that was? You have no clue. Here I had in reach somebody who was going to teach me how to work with hemiplegic migraine and how to do exercises without getting a migraine. That is one of the difficult things with a hemiplegic migraine, with a cluster migraine, and even with a migraine. I'm sorry. It's the one that restricts from the back of your head the blood flow. Well, so I was young, I considered. So I went on my own adventure, and that'll be for another day, to learn about how you can exercise with these. Because when people think of migraines, they think, oh, migraines are nothing. Headaches are nothing. They have no clue what these kind of devastating migraines are. Okay. So then while I'm there, I meet a wonderful lady. I don't know how I found her, but I have a love of nature, and that's where my metal art started. This is my first metal art piece, and the whole piece, this is a river, these are rock mounts, these are trees, this is me dreaming out in the forest, this is some forest, this is a little deer with horns, okay, that growing. No, he's not a big one yet. And no, here he is over there. And this is some scrubs. And I put dreams, and I put a sun there because you could be in the cold, and you could be in the freezing, or you could be, in a great day, and the sun could be shining. And then I have Affair with Nature, Deborah Marie. This is leather. I came across a leather shop, and at that leather shop, I found out this gentleman, he was Native American. He had been in this shop for years and years and years. I think at that time he told me 35 years he had this leather shop. He had beautiful horse saddles. And if you want to know him, I still got his business card. And if you're into horse saddles and if you can afford him and have him ship it down, I'm well worth it. And also with buckles and belts and various other things. Well, I said to him, I says, do you mind? Can I go behind and let me touch the leather? Because I'd like to make things out of leather, and let me touch it. And he allowed me to touch this piece, and he made it, and it was not cheap to have him make it. And then I put this piece on it, and he did this indention and stuff. And I had to help him with what was expected in my mind. And then this particular piece of leather, he had some strips that he entwined in his saddles. And so I got him to allow me to purchase some. I wasn't his regular customer. He's used to doing saddles. He's used to doing real cowboy stuff. Now, he told me he did Yellowstone. He told me he did a lot of saddles on that, and he told me he did Kevin Costner's. And because they did a lot of filming up there out in the countryside, which is another area where, you just go right out like you can in Kentucky, and there's your cows, there's your grasses. It was just beautiful hillsides and just rolling hills. And I've got some pictures of the grasses and the flowers just flowing, or films rather. But getting back to this, so I took this leather, and then this is a Swarovski crystal, and then I twisted some copper And I just twisted and twisted, and then you can tell on this back side that through this crystal you can see a piece of copper there that is I just designed and did some work with it, and I put it on this piece of leather. Now, this leather doesn't have to hang as long. It can be adjusted to the person and stuff like that. But I've found this to be one of my favorite art pieces because I do individual. Always remember, I do unique individual art pieces. I can't repeat this. I can't repeat this. I can't repeat this necklace. My brain is not, after my brain injury, when I started doing jewelry, I got my own logo, got my own name. It was because of Deborah Marie. Is Deborah Marie, and she only does one as a kind. And when you walk away, that's what you get. And your neighbor, nobody else is going to get the same. Never. Wherever you walk and wear my jewelry. So now that I've expounded on that a little bit to clarify why I'm so unique, is that it has to do a lot with my brain injury. I went into a place here, and the woman had beautiful work all over the room. I was just, Well, guess what? She had like if I had this, she had the same necklace with different stones. Like if I was to put in here pewter, or if I was to put in here another type of metal or something like that, if I adjusted this to a different kind, but she had the same exact style. But I'm not knocking her, because the bottom line, she had beautiful work. But you would see box after box after box of your stone, of what you wanted, but it wasn't unique. It wasn't one of a kind. You could buy that, and then you walk out of her store, somebody else has got the same thing in a different color, stone, or whatever crystal, or whatever type of diamonds or something that you want to. Now, I hope I'm not ending up on a dead note, but I got to make sure you understand. When you live in Canada, if you make 100,000, you only get 50,000 of that paycheck, because the rest of it goes to the Canadian government, and that is true. I know that. I live there. But I'm going to ask you, go to www.deborahmarieofficial.com to see more of my jewelry. I'm going to be having a new website, and then from there, you can also see my blog and stories, and I have more stories about my life there. And this world will continue with Deborah Marie backing you, helping you, because everything that you purchase goes back to a hospital or patient care. I help since 2011. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.